Welcome to the Uncommon Communicator Podcast, where we bring enlightenment to the topic of communication. I'm so excited today to have again on the show Miss Jennifer Lacy, known as the famous lady. She did not give her name to herself. Now, a little bit about Jen. She's a Texas native with a background in teaching, an author, an illustrator, and co-host of the No BS with Jen and Jess. I think you're the host because you need to be all talking. You are a conference speaker. This is huge, and I saw this on LinkedIn. Recipient of the Dallas Business Journal 2023 Woman of the Year in Business Award. That's awesome.
Thank
and
you.
For the last 20 years, you have worked for Robbins and Morton as a lean practice leader. Jennifer, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. I'm excited to be here.
Well, we are going to touch again on some more topics. I think last time it turned into soft skills. I don't think that's necessarily probably even your best trait, but you're so good at it. Like there's so many other things that you build and build in trust. So there's a couple of things I wanted to jump into. Now, you are also co-author of this book right here, Lean and Love, with Mr. Jesse something Hernandez. Who's this guy?
Yes.
Do you want to talk about how this whole book of Lean and Love came about real quick? Just kind of a brief synopsis.
Yes. I will try. Jesse does a better job, but I will absolutely try. So he and I crossed paths. We collided on some lean stuff. We were on a planning committee for a Congress for LCI. And, me not willing to sit back and just watch what's going on. I, went up and we had some really intense conversations. And then following that, he reached out and said, hey, got this idea, had these letters, and I want to do a live stream and get people, kind of talk about some of this stuff that nobody likes to talk about. And I want to do it with you. And so we kind of had more conversations, had some brainstorming, and then we dove in, did them via live stream. And then at the end, a couple of things happened. Number one is we got a lot of people that jumped in and really wanted to be a part of these vulnerable, kind of uncomfortable things that we were able to help facilitate pretty well. And then people were like, we need more of these type of conversations. So that's one thing that happened. And the other is that when we finished with lots and lots of hours of live stream, I'm sure you know about that, that people were like, we would love a Cliff Notes version. And then Jesse said, oh, no problem. We'll just edit down and go through all the script and all that. And his patience is about this small. And so he started that and he went, oh, this isn't going to work. And so he said, hey, like, what are your thoughts on like putting all this in a book? And so we did the live streams first. And all of a sudden there's like, oh, like, let's write a book and put it all together. And so also based on the need for people to want more of these conversations, we launched No BS with Jen and Jess platform. So all of that came from like just starting with that conversation.
That's ridiculous. And then you're also at what anniversary right now for that?
Oh my gosh. So this month, it's December. This month, we're 2 years where we launched, and every other Saturday morning, we do live streams around uncomfortable conversations. And at first it was a little bit geared towards like just construction, because we both are in construction and in the lean space. But we realized, and it didn't take us long, that half of our audience are not even in construction. And so we realized the things we're talking about are not just limited to the construction industry, but they are like world issues. And they are things that every human being that wakes up every day runs into these type of dilemmas and kind of sometimes these frustrations. And so 2 years this month, we will, people keep showing up. And so we keep getting to talk about these things.
It's amazing how we think construction's in this bubble, and there's a bubble of construction, but the problems we face are not unique to the rest of the world, especially in even in finding people to do work, finding construction workers. Everybody's dealing with some kind of mental, health issue, which is really some of the things that we touch on a lot in the No BS tribe, as well as this whole vulnerability word that you've made me say out loud. I'm certainly new. Jesse gave me a pass. I finally figured it out. And if vulnerability is only sharing the stupid things that I've done so others can get better, that's a level of vulnerability. I'm willing to accept that one. I'll take that one.
Okay.
So I've started there.
I get more in this show.
I I didn't like saying the word or talking about it, and but we're seeing a movement even within my own company, and I think that you guys are on the leading edge of it. You were talking about it before; it was cool, really. Now, if it's hitting mainstream, hitting companies that you personally haven't touched, where we're talking about it, then it's really hitting something that has found a nerve, and that nerve is raw and it needs healing, and the only way to heal it is to really talk about it. So those are one of the things that you're really bringing a light to the industry in that and making it okay, which one of the things that I really admire about you is I think we're similar in how we have stuffed our feelings away, how we shield. That's probably one of my best things that I do is guard those feelings, but you've been able to go past that. And I mean, you've had very difficult times in your life growing up, but how have you really, what was the turning point? What was your moment of enlightenment to be able to go to this point of vulnerability?
Well, there's probably multiple, but so historically, I've been really, really good at the protection. So you call it shield, I call it protection, but it's that armor that because of our experiences, because of our trauma, because of all the hurt, all the things in our lives that, we've allowed penetrate, we've realized like we can control that by just not letting things penetrate. And, and that can keep us from, again, getting hurt, bad things happening to us, but it also keeps everything else out. And we can focus, we can be successful, we can be high performing, and that's great. And we get lots of accolades for that, but we're also keeping a lot of good things out. And I'm going to own this. Within the last 3 or 4 years, as these conversations were happening, as even the stuff that Jesse and I have done together, I've realized there are a lot of people out there that live in that mode, that protection mode, and that I've got to protect what's inside of me. And that's okay at the detriment of what's outside of me. And as a mother of 2 teenage girls right now, one's almost a teenager, the other one's 15. If I show up that way, both places, at home and at work, how am I setting a good example for them?
Right.
And so as a mother, you want to be protective and you want to make sure that you're helping them be good humans. But I need them to understand the importance of, being real, in that it's okay to hurt and it's okay to fail and it's okay to learn and it's okay to not be okay. And if they don't see that in me, how could they possibly be able to show that to other people? So that's been that. I mean, all of that has happened over the course, but that's a driving point as to when I show up. And a lot of my stuff's on the socials. So a lot of my stuff's out there and anyone can watch it, including my daughters. And so what am I doing to be able to be to exhibiting the behaviors that I want to make sure I can see in them?
So your moment of enlightenment came in realizing that you also need to model it for your children. So they don't have to go through 20, 30 years of shielding. Is that right?
Yes. And it's not always easy. And there's a lot of tears and there's some screaming and there's some yelling. I mean, that's parenting, but it's also in the end, are they in a place to where it's okay to hurt? It's okay to fail. It's okay to make a mistake. The world's not going to come crashing down because we shield ourselves, to not make mistakes, to have all the answers. And it's okay for me to go, I don't know that. Let's look it up. Let's figure it out. There's not a lot of people that figure that out early.
Right. Yeah. And that's what I fear. I'm on that path towards where I'm going to figure it all out when I'm 90, right? When I take my last breath, maybe 100, I don't know. I should eat better to live that long, but you're right. You want to figure them out earlier. I know for us, especially now, because this really does tie to the No BS tribe and this idea of dealing with vulnerability is our family as a history does not talk about grieving very well. We're terrible at it. And I looked through this process here recently. We recently had to put our dog down. which was first one ever, the hardest thing any human could ever do, to make that decision. And you don't realize the connection that you make with that, but having to now deal with those emotions that I didn't expect, and having to try to model it to my children, who I haven't shown even how I grieved for my dad, was not at all. And then for my mom, I lost it. Like, I could not even, communicate or talk through it. And now I've got McGee to talk about. And so those are all those steps, those processes. But all of those are all come into the idea of vulnerability, like how much stuffing it was so much easier. But now that I find
our industry does that, like I don't know why we think like we're dealing with trauma or we're dealing with grief, and then we go to work, and how do we not equate that every other human being that we look at every day and engage with could also be dealing with those exact things?
Yeah, that's so true. That's so true. So one thing I want to talk a little bit about the book. And the reason, of course, you're here to talk about communication. This is what the podcast is all about. Yeah. But everything kind of weaves into it in some way. But when I look through the book, Lean in Love, beautiful illustrations in here as well.
Thank you.
You are the illustrator of that. When I read through it, and I read the Jen comments, I'll tell you, this is how I dissected this book. Okay. Like, I spoke with Jesse, and I read through his book of stories, which was just brilliantly put together. His Becoming the Promise That You're Intended to Be. But this one here, just kind of to understand Jen a little bit. And so I went to your comments, read through them. And what are they always about? They're about communication, like it's communicating and trust. And there's so many things that come out from what you present. But this is an interesting story here. And quick format for our readers. First off, as you talked about, this was a live stream. So you took the live stream notes, comments, questions, threw them into a book. There were 5 things. It's really the 5 S love letters. So you took 5 S'ing, turned it into these love letters. And this is how you can work through relationships and communication, stuff like that. So in taking that, going through those steps, there's just blurbs. Here's quotes. Like, here's some great advice. Here's a question. Here's some tips, stuff like that. But here's a story that you shared. You can't rush communication. I have 2 girls. One is really good at math. She is walking me through her division problem. She needs help. Something is not jiving. I started to tell her what the problem was, and she said, "No, Mom, let me walk through the process." As she was walking me through it, she saw where she hadn't subtracted right. She needed to fix it herself to learn.
That's one example of 1,000 of, and I've had this conversation recently with a friend, is that like we want to make our children's lives better, and we've experienced and we've done some things that we learned from, and so like we can help them. But how did we learn? We learned by not having someone help us and by having to figure it out. And our automatic response is like, we can fix it. We have the solution. And we have a whole nother thing that Jesse and I do with emotional bungee jumpers, that it's like, I need to allow you to keep your problem. It is not my job to take your problem away. Let me ask questions to help you be able to get where you need to be. And it's a prime example of that, of like not being the person to jump in and fix it, because then how would that help her?
Yeah. And we're driven by, it's almost reciprocal, right? If you were extreme one way, then you want to go and solve their problems. And, I think Jesse coined the term shanking. What is it?
Solution shanking.
Solution shanking. Yes. And that seems the easiest solution, and it's not. And I think that's been one of the biggest challenges for me, is to let people walk it through and learn it themselves. They're gonna learn it deeper and better. And I think that what a great example how much our kids teach us that. But that was such a great example of she stopped you. If she didn't stop you, you were going to give her the answer, and then she never would have solved it on her own. And that multiplied 1 billion times into everything we do at work. In fact, for me, I've taken a lot of that, and when people come to me with problems, I used to just give out the answers, go do this, and boom, we're on. And I don't anymore. I ask them first. And what's amazing is most of the time, high percentage, they already have the answer. They're coming to you, ask you a question, they already have the answer. Well, why don't you give me your answer? And then we can just, cut to the quick, and then they own it. But I thought, what a great example. But I love that you can't rush communication, because for me, I'm always like, all right, I know what the next steps are. Let's just get to them. Let's move on. But you can't. You have to let it grow. And that was such a great story illustrating that. It had the word communication in it, so I had to jump to that one.
No, and just want to add to that. And Jesse and I have this conversation a lot. Is like, we're busy. Our worlds are busy. We're always like in this mode of like, what's next, and all of the things we're trying to cram into our day, and that busyness makes us rush communication.
Yeah.
Because we're not thinking about the moment. We're not thinking about the person in front of us. We're not thinking about the issue. We're thinking about what's next. And like, and that example, it hit straight on. Like, it's not about what I'm trying to hurry up and get to after she's done with her homework. It's what are we doing right now in this moment? And like, she like called me out, like, and that's what it was.
Right. And what a life lesson for all of us to learn. That was just brilliant. I love that. There's another one, of course, it's titled Keep Communicating. Of course, I gravitated towards that one. But here's another quote from Jen. There are different ways to communicate. Nonverbal communication is one example. Being clear with what we are thinking and feeling is critical in guarding against sending mixed signals. Sometimes even being able to say, I need to step away, or I need some time, can save the 20,000 scenarios we make up in our heads from happening. Walking away could dissolve the situation or fuel it.
Okay, so there's a lot packaged into that chunk of words right there. And so it's a couple of things. I think it's more than a couple of things, but we'll talk about a couple of things. Number one is those scenarios we make up in our head, the what ifs. Like, based on just our experience and the things we've done, it's so easy to jump to things that have never happened, and that may never happen. But those what ifs keep us from making progress. And those what ifs keep us from being able to see like the potential of what something could be. And so an example of this, and it's one specifically, is I love to take notes. Like, that is my way to capture things, but also to get things out of my head so I can keep adding more things into my head. So I love taking notes, and I take notes pretty much in every conversation, or if I have a thought or an idea, I'm like, oh, I got to write that down because I don't want to lose it. And I was having a conversation with Jesse, talking about how I'm struggling with reflection and things like that. Like, because I struggle with reflection because I have to stop, and I have to like not be moving to be able to reflect, which is like crazy. And so we were having this conversation. And so he's like, well, what do you do? He journals, and so I had tried some other things to no avail, but they did not work. And so I said, okay, you know what? I'm just going to walk, because I enjoy walking. I'm going to use that walking time as reflection time. And for me, it's like, okay, if I'm going to do that, then I'm not taking any notepads. I'm not taking any earbuds. I'm not taking any phone. I'm going to use that as reflection time. And what I realized in that time is that I had an idea, and I was like, oh my gosh, I've got to write this down. I didn't have anything. And so I kept thinking, and that idea grew and grew and grew. And then another idea came that came from that. Another idea came from that. And it got so big by the time I finished walking that my reflection was like, it hit me in my face. Trevor, you would have never got there if you stopped and wrote down that very first thing. And so to me, it's the inability sometimes to allow ourselves to disconnect and walk away and get out of the middle of the chaos, so that we can like identify or see something that maybe, would have never happened.
Yeah. And so you bring up, I think, a key point in any communication and really any collaboration, any battle, because I think we go into battle mode. And when we're in battle mode, we're going to hit that aggressively until we get our point and get out. Mm-hmm. But the idea that's not effective in communication. And I think that's one of the easiest thing for people to do is to take a breath and walk away. Take time to collect your thoughts at a high level. Now you're going, a little bit deeper in that. You're saying you do that, and then now you're able to go, yourself into a better understanding of it that you never would have got to before. So there's so much, and there was a lot to unpack in that one. Because, and in fact, I was looking at that thinking, man, this is probably 3 or 4 bullet points that were just thrown out in a quote, and then it's like, all right, let's move on. And I'm like, well, I'm not going to let us.
Well, can I add one more example from just unpackaging from that section is going back to my daughter is she overthinks and she escalates and she, her anxiety skyrockets. And so she then becomes worst case scenario. And what do you do as a parent when your child is spiraling or your child is not doing well? You want to fix it.
Yeah.
You want to fix it. And in those moments, like I realized I just want to get to the solution. I want to get to where she's better. And I did nothing but exacerbate it. Mm-hmm. And like it took more and more times of I'm fueling it. But I can fix it. I can fix it because I can fix things. So like that was not the way to do it. And like I had to remove myself and I had to allow her to get to a place where she could even receive.
Right.
And like we don't think about that when we're interacting with people.
The other thing too is your daughter, like you're learning her still. I mean, she's still going to continue to evolve, but understanding people as well too, knowing that some need to be in that battle. Other people need that time to, exchange. One thing that I've realized is that I think out loud, and that's good and bad. And I've found like I have frustrated some people by just shooting ideas out there. And, I'm like, here's an idea. And he's like, slow it down. Like he wanted to process each of them. Yeah. So we had a really great learning moment for me to learn him a little bit. But the thing I learned about myself is that isn't effective for this individual for sure. So I have to know how to regulate that and change my style in doing that. And this is kind of a sidebar on that. Jesse, I asked Jesse for some feedback on our interview. I'm like, give me give me a little bit of feedback. And he loves giving feedback, which only if you ask, right? I'm going to change. But what I found is I clarify my questions a lot. Like instead of just asking a question, I just clarify it. And I caught myself the other day doing it because I don't know what I'm going to ask yet until I have processed it out loud. So that's something I got to work on because I can't, for the most part, me always clarifying and then getting to the question, I should be getting better at practice in my head for other people who don't respond well to that. So it's just all that. It's just an interesting process on how to deal with all of that.
But that came from feedback too, which is super important. We know that communication, that having that reciprocal conversation and having someone provide feedback and being in a place of trust where you could know that the person that's telling you that is coming from a good place and that they are, they're one of those people that are trying to help you. Like that's a big deal.
Well, and as we talked about even last week in the live stream, one thing that just another revelation for me is I realized that I'm my own worst critic. And that's one reason I haven't been inviting in other people because I'm my own worst critic. Like, why do I need you to criticize me? And it's not, feedback is not criticism. So that allowing in of people to help guide me and help me get better has all been driven off of that issue of trust. Do I trust them enough? But also for me, taking a little bit step deeper is to not let people's opinions, thoughts, whatever, affect me. Like I'm going to take all I can, but I'm not going to let it put me in a funk or a bad mood or anything. That mindset alone has allowed me to even get even more feedback because before to me, it was always criticism because I was criticizing myself.
Well, it's the best response. It doesn't matter how horrible that you feel from the feedback is thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so simple, but like as soon as that's the response, it keeps the door open for more.
Yes.
Whether you whether you go to them again later or not, but as soon as, and there's so many people, and I'm going to tell you, they do this and it's not even, I don't even think it's conscious. I think it's subconsciously. Mm-hmm. That when someone says something to you or somebody gives you feedback, your response is to defend it.
Yep.
And it's like you're doing it because you're in protection mode. And we talked about that. You're in protection mode. You're trying to protect yourself. But like, then why did you ask?
Yeah. And that's in a situation where you're asking and getting defensive and you're in, I would say, even a little bit level of trust with somebody, even then we become defensive. And the one thing I learned from Jocko Willink is he talks about how when somebody's like criticizing you, hear them in the background, or you just hear somebody just talking bad stuff about you, that there's always a grain of truth in there that we need to accept. And
Yes.
once that, hit my mind and I thought, okay, there is a grain of truth. Okay, yeah, you're right. I do need to work on that. Instead of letting that anger me, let it upset me or hate that person, it's like, all right, there's a grain, and there always is a grain of truth. Now they may be slanted, maybe they're just miserable people, but there's a grain of truth in there. And if you can take that, then you become better by learning from that.
And what I've realized, what's helped me when I get feedback, good or bad, or even when it's something that like before would really hurt my feelings, that if someone's saying it, they believe it.
Yes.
And in my opinion, I can say they're wrong, but if they believe it and it's what they feel, is it wrong?
Right. But the other thing, and I've given a little bit, I'm trying to give a little bit more grace in that I'll sometimes say things that I don't mean either. And so I want to, that's why remaining calm is always the best thing to do, to ask a clarifying question and then allow that person to say, well, that's really not, I didn't intend it that way. Understanding that your intention still hurt. And so you have to be able to pull that back. But the idea is, are those the right words that you chose to use, and give an opportunity for that to maybe steer a different way. Yeah. There's another quote from the book. It was another, I don't know if it was Jen or not. It wasn't. So if they're not Mark, Jen, or Jess, who's writing this stuff?
It's usually the copy is conversational, and so it's not specific. So it could have been anybody.
Well, this one really connected with me, because in trying to find out what is my purpose, like what is the Uncommon Communicator purpose, to bring enlightenment to the topic of communication, but what's the deeper purpose of that? And I have really probably in the last 6 months realized that I want to help give people a voice. And I can do that through learning communication skills, through learning techniques, through learning how to be heard is going to elevate you. So that has become my kind of underlining theme. I haven't told this to anyone before, but that's what I'm working on. And this is what you said on, let's see, they're not page numbered, page number heart. Yeah. People just want to matter.
Yes. Oh, yes. That's burned in my soul.
They want to be heard. And that's why I'm like, bam, this is exactly it. I need to hear Jen's take on that, because they want to matter, but they also, to be heard, you got to speak. And yes, there's a lot of communication non-verbally, but you need to speak. You need to be heard. This is what else you said. They want to be respected. When we go into any interaction and put people first, it will change the way we approach the conversation. We're focusing on personal relationships. Now we save them, how we save them, how we stay in them, how we value them, how we evaluate them, and how to keep them viable. It is no different in the workspace. People want their work to matter, to make a difference. Tell me more about that one.
Yes. So my story behind this is, when we think about, and I'm going to use construction because that's the space we're in. When we think about construction, I don't know many people, and I'm not saying there's not any, but I don't know many people that wake up in the morning and they go, you know what? I want to get hurt today. I want to get hurt so bad that it impacts the financial, it has a financial impact on my family. I want to go and I want to screw up something so bad that I could lose my job and that I could hurt somebody else. I want to go show up and get in an argument with someone because I know I'm right, that it will sever a relationship. I don't know many people that wake up and think that way. And so when we look at it from that context, people come into an environment, a culture, an interaction, and something, whether it's emotional or, something, there's got some emotional baggage that they're bringing in, that they're already in this defensive mode, something happens. And like the way we react and the way we respond to things is so important. But not only that, what environment and what culture are we creating when these people come in? That in my visual is always like, we don't have people that come into our construction site and they get to the gate and they take their human hat off and they put their hard hat on, and they come in and then they're just there to produce outcomes all day long, and that humanness just doesn't play into anything. And then they get to go back through the gate, put their human hat back on, and go home. Like those things don't stay inside and outside the gate. Like they're bringing all the whatever the things are happening at home, their issues, any health problems, anything going on there, that all comes with them. And then when they're at work and they've had a big fight or something, somebody got hurt, or something went wrong, and they're going to have to work later or whatever, they're not going to just be able to shut that down when they walk back out of the gate. And so when I say people just want to matter, like all of them, the whole human, they want to matter, not just they want to make money and they want to make sure their family's okay. And so when we can look at that whole human, and that when they're at work, do we only focus on the outcomes they produce, or do we focus on the person?
Mm-hmm.
And I think historically, because it's construction and because the outcomes pay the bills,
mm-hmm.
and the outcomes are how we make money and how we can judge things and how we can have metrics and all these things, the outcomes are easy to be the focus. But like if we're not shifting our attention and our engagement and the things that are important to us into that human part and to the person that's doing the work, like we're failing. We're failing ourselves, we're failing our companies, we're failing our the people that we work with, because they don't need to think that that's the way the world works. Like they are human beings first. And if we focus on that, I've experienced, and when I see that environment put in place, they do better work. They get excited about helping other people and having, like you said it earlier, they get excited about sharing.
Yeah.
And something they see or something that they saw that they're a little worried about. Like for us, having that platform to be able to go, I don't think that's right, or this may not be safe. Like when you've created something to where it's okay to care about the person first, it is a game changer.
Big time. And looking at it at kind of two levels here too. First off, caring about them and who they are, just acknowledging that. That's item number one. It just even, hey Jose, how's it going today? That is the first step in knowing everybody on your job, knowing everybody that they're human, they're there, they have stuff going on. I had a carpenter on my job recently. I knew about his son came and worked for us. He joined the Marines during that time frame. He worked there with us. I learned about his other kids, and so you learn about all of that factor. And he was probably one of the most productive people that I've had on my job sites, and would do anything, like well outside of what would just be his defined scope of, drywall, studs and framing, stuff like that. But that's all part of building that relationship. But the other side of that, so that's side number one, acknowledgement. But the other part is really about being heard and drawing that out. And that's what I love about that. And again, this is my passion now, is knowing how much is left on the table, because for two reasons: we don't ask. So you got to ask. It's got to start with leadership. Leadership has to ask, but also they have to be given, back to that, your point of making that space open enough for them to give their opinion. And that's a tough one to do in some situations, because as a leader, those are hard to manage. And I'm finding some people don't have that skill set to be able to say no, like, hey, thank you for sharing that. But in your mind, you're like, that's the worst idea I've ever heard, but you have to let them have that idea, because 2 ideas later, they're going to come up with this huge time-saving effort. But all of that, those are the part about being heard. But the biggest part is the fact that you acknowledged it.
When you've released control of the conversation. And to me, like, we love to have the agenda and everything set, and this is what's going to happen, and I'm going to make sure we stay on time, and you are controlling the conversation. As soon as you think that you are controlling the conversation, you are leaving zero space for there to be anything that's off topic, anything that takes you off road, anything that could potentially be something amazing. Like, you have completely shut it down because you're trying to control it. And I struggle with control, and it's I'm a work in progress for sure. But control is an illusion.
Mm-hmm.
Like it is an illusion, because if we're controlling one thing, we are completely negating something else.
Yeah. And that is so we're going to talk a little bit about trust this morning.
Okay. Do it.
But what you're talking about falls right along the line of trust. Like I've seen within some leadership where they want to control it and everybody sees it. They know where you're going. They're talking about it and they're like, telling you this, and then you're shaking your head. And what they're doing is, back to your illusion of control, is we have that. I mean, there's so much psychology in how we lead that, but people that are in the know that you're being led that way, and there's no buy-in, there's no authenticity to it. And so you can and lead and guide that way, but then it does lack that trust that falls within that whole idea. You lose the trust. So jumping into this book, The Speed of Trust, it's a book that I've listened to several times. I read through. It's a Stephen M.R. Covey. It's Stephen's son, I guess, wrote the book. A dad helped him out. But there was something that really stuck out for me, which I think fits into our conversation, interesting enough. And I challenge you, to read this book, because there is a lot of value in learning trust. And that's one thing that I'm practicing. I'm learning. I'm understanding a little bit more about myself. But this is so funny. He says, one of his 13 principles. So in this one particular principle is get better to build trust. And I'm like, how does this even fit? And he says, get better. And that's one of his principles, is based on the principles of continuous improvement. Are we in that space talking about? Listen to this: learning and change, like continuous improvement, learning and change. It is what the Japanese call Kaizen, and it builds enormous trust. Now, so reading through trust, and now we're talking continuous improvement, all of those things. I just thought it was a strange connection. I hadn't put the two together. But do you feel like the continuous improvement path that you're on? I mean, you're the process continuous improvement leader for your company. Like, do you think its main principle is also building trust?
Yes, 100%. And so the reason why is that, yes, I'm in a position where I get to engage with all of our projects, all of our departments, all of our people, everybody that comes into our company. I get to have interactions with them. Okay. And some of those people have not been on this 20-year journey with me, or been on this 10-year journey with me. And so when I go into a room to facilitate these conversations, why would they listen to me? And I, like, there's moments, and it's not me, like, not imposter syndrome of why would they care? Like, it's me going, why would someone come in a room and listen to what I have to say, or do, if I ask a question, why would they answer? And for me, it's because even some of it's implied, just because they haven't engaged with me enough, or because of the support that I have within our company from our leadership, that the trust is there, the integrity is there. And because of that, because of the platform they give me, because of, the support they give me, they trust that whatever I've been asked to do, that I can do it. So there's that part. I think that there's multiple things of trust, but part of it is, do people that have tasked me with something trust that I can get it done? Mm-hmm. And sometimes they don't know what that could be, because my thinking may be way in front of, where we are as a company, but they trust that because of my body of work, because of the things that have happened, that we're going to get there. And so there's that trust, which I think is huge, because not everybody I engage with, I have a relationship with. Mm-hmm. The other part of that is when I do get to engage with our people and our projects, how do you build trust? And like, that's important, because I don't think people think about that. Like, they should trust me because of my title. They should trust me because I've been here and I have experience and I've done these things. That is not how I earn trust, because those are not things that I'm able to show up and go, you just need to trust me because of this, this, and this. So how do I immediately put them in a place to where they're like, this person is genuine, this person is real, and they care about me. And this is a word you don't like very much, but I'm going to say it. It starts with vulnerability. It starts with vulnerability. And how does vulnerability tie to trust? Is that if I can get to a point to where I take down that armor and that protection, and they see that I am a human and that I genuinely care about them, and I'm going to expose myself because I want to be able to connect with them, it is amazing what they're willing to do. what they're willing to share. And then it happens one time, James, one time. And I will never forget them and they will never forget me.
Yeah. The whole idea of continuous improvement building trust, especially fitting into what we do, right, in construction, and for what you do as your day job. Is this your night job? I don't know what. I don't know. We'll cut that out. But the idea is, when you're a self-improver, so we'll go at that level, not just improving. Well, no, let's start with this. You're improving processes that make work easier, right? So
they make work better. Yes, because it's not always easy. Because I have behind me, I have a sign that says "Work hard and be nice to people." Like it's not always going to be easy, and you're going to have to get up, and it's going to be tough, and you're going to have to get your hands dirty, but it's worth it.
But you're looking at the hands. I hear you've mentioned that before too, right? You're looking at the hands, you're looking at the feet, you're making that work better for them. So that improvement is a process that's building trust to say, I see you, and I'm going to help you. You may not even see it because you're right in the work right there. So continuous improvement at that level is building trust. But the other thing is self-developers as well too. For me, and this is semi-unpopular, is I have this theory of prove me wrong. And people don't like that. Like, you should never prove the superintendent wrong. I might prove me wrong. But here's the background to it is prove me wrong, because then I only become better.
Right. I learn. Yes.
I have now, you've proven me wrong, but I have done nothing in doing that other than now made me more right. You've proven me wrong, and now I'm more right because I'm taking your information. But that type of scenario, that space, that area that you've opened up really does bring in a certain level of trust, because I'm willing to accept your feedback and apply it. And then now we're all become better for it. It's just such a neat circle of growth, I think, that comes through trust, through continuous improvement. The one thing I do like about this book, I'm a big summary person. They do summarize the behaviors, which, if you summarize anything with me, if you're given a training, if I'm in a Jen Lacy training and you gave me some paper that summarized it, do you know what I'm going to do first? I'm going to go to the summary first. I'm going to see, okay, this is what she's going to talk about. Let's see how much time gets wasted, through all these other stories, or were they beneficial? So I'm terrible that way, but they did have a summary. And of course I went to the summaries first, but this is the summary of this whole idea of getting better, this behavior: continuously improve, increase your capabilities, be a constant learner, develop feedback systems, both formal and informal, act on the feedback you receive, thank people for feedback, don't consider yourself above feedback, don't assume today's knowledge and skills will be sufficient for tomorrow's challenges. And you have a saying for that.
What are you talking about?
So you have a saying that, and it escapes me. That's why I was hoping that it would connect.
What do you think?
It has something to do with what got me here.
Won't get me there.
Yeah.
Yep. 100%. It won't.
That's
And if we live in a space of like we've reached where we're supposed to go, we're done. Like, we're done. Like, you'll have a moment in the glory, you'll have a moment of success, and then you're going to start right back at the bottom.
Yeah, and that's exactly what they said here. Don't assume today's knowledge and skills will be sufficient for tomorrow's challenges. I like the way you word it better, because it's more concise and it really nails it, which is what got you here won't get you there. It's the same thing. What I think was fascinating, though, and this is why I wanted to kind of tie all this together at the end of our conversation, is tying into this book that you haven't read yet. Yeah,
no, it's on my list. I told you, I'm adding it to my list.
Everything that I have read in this summary is all the things that you have talked about in the idea of building trust through continuous improvement. So I just thought that was a neat tie together in regards to that. So Jen,
and I want to add one more, just based on your summary, is a lot of times people don't give us feedback because they're worried about how we're going to respond. So we hit the part on how we need to respond if we're asking for feedback. But I also know I've got some people that I hold in high regard, and anything they tell me, I would receive it, and I would realize that they care about me. And when I've asked them for something, they're like, "Well, I don't really want to share this with you because you may not like it." And I'm like, oh, whoa, whoa. Like, why would you not? Because Jennifer, some of it is like not rating things that tie to you directly. Some of them didn't rate them very high. I'm like, well, then that's even better,
Yep.
because now I know there's a gap on a specific project, and that's something I can do to get better. Like, and they know me, yet because it was tied directly to me, like they were worried that it would be something that like I wouldn't receive well. And so it's like we've got to make sure that communication is open both ways, not just when we ask for it, but setting the stage so that people are willing to give us something when it's not a fun conversation.
Yeah, and that takes a very deep level of trust, but also skill. I think there's two of those involved in that, because I'm not very good at that. I'll admit that right now, as I like bringing in the fluffy stuff, right? I want to encourage you to pump you up to where you're going. And there's times where I'm learning I've got to be better at giving those type of criticisms or critiques or evaluations. So, because you want to hear it. I need to know that you want to hear it, because I'm in the same boat too. As I don't get deep enough criticism because of my position. And I think by nature, we're not very good at it. A lot of people aren't. And all of these things don't help us improve.
Well, and because I think they're uncomfortable. Like when you have to sit there and give feedback that's kind of sticky and yucky, or when you're in a place where that the feedback you could be getting could be a little bit like not great. Like, no, it's an uncomfortable space, and you could either make it as uncomfortable and awkward as it has been, and it will continue to be the way it is, or you can diffuse it and turn it and flip it upside down. And to me, that's what I try to do. I try to build the relationships and have the conversations and push those things to where when they know they're bringing me something, it's like, hey, Jennifer, da, 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 and then we keep moving. And then I act on it and I make a change, and they go, I need to give her more feedback. Like, that's what we've got to do.
Wow, that's great. You build momentum to get more feedback. They want to give you feedback.
Yes.
Fascinating. Well, so while we wrap things up, if you want people to get a hold of you, how do they get a hold of Miss Jennifer Lacey?
The best way is LinkedIn. Like, again, you can go to my specific page, Jennifer Lacey. If you just do a search, you can probably find me. And then also, if you go to No BS with Jen and Jess, same way. Like, I'm out there on both platforms. That's the easiest way. And then connect with me, and I will be happy to help and support sometimes to a detriment, just based on feedback I get sometimes, but I will share and I will help support anything that anybody needs. If they want an example, if they want, hey, what about this? I have a thought. There's so much out there, and we've lived in this place of protection, and I don't want to share my secrets because someone else may be as good as me, and I don't live in that world. So I am willing to share and connect. And if somebody needs something, if I don't have the answer, I have people around me that do. So happy to help.
Yeah, and that's so much appreciated. And I think what you're doing for the industry, as well as I'm seeing others, it used to be, like you said, that we were very guarded, protecting our interests. You work for a general contractor that's probably double the size of the one that I work for, in the billions, right? And I've sat on some other superintendent committees with some folks through Adam Hoots, companies across the country that are sharing these improvements so we can improve our industry and make us better without that, feeling of competition, because we're all here to make work better, as I found, not easier.
Well, it's going to take all of us. It's got like James, your company's not going to get all the work. My company's not going to get all the work. And there's going to be trades that work on my jobs that are going to go to your jobs, and they're going to go to another place. And if we're looking at this as an industry issue and an industry solution, then when trades leave me and they go work for you, it's going to make your jobs better. And,
Exactly.
I'm saying, it's like, we've got to look at this bigger than just an individual silo. Like, this is a network that when we make people better, then they're going to go and do better things in other places, which makes our industry better.
Exactly. Yep. And that makes us all better.
Yes.
All right. So this is our time for the Uncommon Communicator moment. This is the time where, for the last hour or less that we've been chatting, I want to sum it up. How would you sum up our conversation? What's the one thing that people could leave with today from today's conversation?
Well, I think the summary for me would be that the feedback and trust conversation, I'm going to try to put it together, is that you cannot dictate trust. And so what are you doing? What intentionally are you doing to create that environment and being able to walk into where someone will actually listen to what you have to say? And the trust feeds into the feedback. So like, don't make assumptions on trust or feedback, but you have to say it. And you not only have to say it, you have to do it. And so if they watch you and your actions don't match what you're asking them to do, then it's going to fail. So you've got to exhibit the things that you want, and then it will come back to you. And so for me, it's the trust you have to earn, but you also, based on your support, you can walk into a room and have it, but you have to feed into it to be able to let them know that you're the real deal.
So you can't dictate trust. You have to show it.
Yes.
Did that sum it all up?
Yes.
Well, that's all we've got for today. See you.
Awesome. Thank y'all. Bye-bye.